Hello, everybody. How are you doing? We're going to start in just a couple minutes. In the meanwhile, if you feel comfortable to do so, let us know where you're joining us from, geography, company, and what you hope to learn about today. From Ireland, lovely. Hope it's a better weather there today than in London. Good day to Danfoss. Many places around the UK, Italy, Munich, lovely Italy, China, Russia, Sweden, Germany. Oh, it's flying. Vermont, Michigan. Hello from, I'm also from Michigan. Good to see you. Netherlands, Dubai. Massive Lego fan, me too. I actually have the, what is it called? The VW bus. It's like this big or so. It's well decorated inside. My cat likes to take it apart, so I've had to like, kind of put it up on a shelf that he can't access. Ah, Naomi, you have it as well. Cool. Yeah, I'm like saving my money for the giant Millennium Falcon one of these days. I am a Star Wars fan, and I did visit the Lego shop one time when out in Billund, and I was literally a kid in the candy shop. The original castle set. Did anybody have the monorail? I had the monorail as a kid. It was like like this space train that kind of went around a track. It was quite cool. Hello, Anna from Milan. Lamborghini, nice touch. So one of my colleagues, Johan Roos, was one of the founders of Lego Serious Play, an exec ed program where you sort of build your company or build your career or lots of different things out of Legos. It's quite amazing. Hello from Uruguay. We have somebody here that's your neighbor from Argentina. So a few people have done Lego Serious Play. Cool. Good morning from Atlanta. Hello from Colombia and hello from Brazil. Yeah, one more minute. No? Should we get going? Okay. All right. So we have the queue to get going. Hello, Paul. Good to see you too. Another cycling fan. So you already have something in common with our host, Christian. So today's session, connecting the dots, how procurement and L&D drive continuous learning at Lego. So I'm happy to be hosting you today. I'm Ben Hope, Vice President of Sales at EF Education First. And with me, I have Christian Dale Damsted from Lego, who's the Senior Global Category Manager. Hello, Christian.
Hello, Ben.
So just to let everyone know what we're going to be talking about today, we have three main topics. One of them is around procurement and L&D working closely together to create value. We are also going to reflect on the past 12 months and how that has changed and innovated both the procurement process and the process of delivering L&D programs. Then last but not least, since creativity is such a big part of the brand values at Lego, we're going to dig into creativity in the procurement process when relating it to L&D. Along the way, if you have questions, please feel free to add them in the chat. And we will, we'll try and address those questions. Some of them, if we can catch them along the way, I'll try and grab them along the way. Otherwise, we have a good long Q&A session near the end after about 35, 40 minutes. So stick around till then if you can, that would be great. And we're going to kick off. So just to tell you a little bit more about your hosts of the webinar. So I'm representing EF and Holt Ashridge. So together it is the world's largest private education company. EF obviously focusing on language, cultural exchange, educational travel. And a part of the EF family is Holt International Business School, a triple accredited leading international business school. Within that is Ashridge Executive Education with 60 years of experience delivering executive education to global business leaders, and beautiful campuses across 4 continents, including Ashridge, Dubai, San Francisco, and Hong Kong. Now, together, the combined offering is to really help develop the communication skills, cultural awareness skills, and leadership development skills for international talent and leaders. And now I'm going to turn it over to our guest Christian to introduce himself and Lego.
Thanks, Ben. And again, hello and hello to everyone. So and a quick introduction to me. The obvious is, of course, my name is Christian. I am a procurement professional. I got more than 16 years of experience working for a number of different companies, working with both direct and indirect procurement. In Lego, I work with professional services, so I manage a couple of categories, among others, the learning and development for our organization. That includes setting, you can say, different global strategies and objectives for the way we want to work with learning and development along with partners and stakeholders. And it's keeping the eye, or my eye, on opportunities in trends, technology, and what moves in the market of innovation. So I try to, with modesty, I don't necessarily want to say that I do everything, but I do play a role in delivering on some of our bigger projects within the learning and development space. So privately, I'm a husband and a father. I'm based out of Odense in Denmark, so the birthplace of the Danish poet Hans Christian Andersen. And as you alluded to before, Ben, I am interested in road cycling, Premier League football, personal development, technology in many different ways, and life in images and video, and then generally just enjoying life. So that's an introduction to me.
Great.
Moving into where I work, and I just want to share that the views that I'll be sharing today is, of course, my own. They're not in any way Lego's official opinion, but they're based on my experiences from my different firms and, of course, where I work right now with the Lego Group. The Lego Group is a family-owned business. It's based out of Billund in Denmark. It was founded in 1932. So it's a multi-generation company that's passed down over the years. We're currently the #1 toy company, which we're very proud of. On top of that, our products are sold in more than 140 different countries. We have more than 17,000 employees across the world. And what is really special to us is that right now we're the #1 reputable brand in the world.
That's an amazing achievement, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah, so this is something worth sharing because it really it's really what is the DNA, the brand framework of the Lego Group. So as you see here on the slide, the belief is children are role models, and our mission is to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. What is important in the context that we're speaking today is that especially our values and our promises. So our values are imagination, creativity, fun, learning, caring, and quality. And we have these promises: the play promise, the partner promise, planet promise, and the people promise. And this brand framework, it captures our values, our spirit, and our passion, you can say. So what really is with Lego and the brand framework is that it's the passion our colleagues show for our mission and our values. And everyone puts in a lot of pride in creating a workplace where people feel supported and where they can reach their full potential while having fun. So a good example of that is that on top of learning and development offerings and enabling our people to succeed, we have an annual play day where colleagues in every site around the world, we spend a day playing, learning how to become ambassadors of play, and how to bring that into our lives, both on the workplace, but also outside of work. And it's said with that when children play, they learn about the world around them, and most importantly, they learn skills they'll use in all of their lives. This is no different to adults. So we emphasize that by having this play day, and you can say a year like the one we've had, some of those skills really transform into resiliency, working in complex situations, communication, collaboration, problem solving, and creativity. And these skills, I believe, are more important than ever right now.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now for a moment, and
Yeah.
I'm going to I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more about your collaboration between yourself and the L&D function and how these values sort of translate into that work.
Yeah. So I think it's important for me to share that in this context. When I work with my stakeholders, I don't control budgets. So in some organizations, it would be considered a service function or service support function. Enabling something, but we and I consider myself very much a partner to both the business, but also partner to our providers and stakeholders, both internal and outside of the company. My approach has always been to collaborate with the stakeholders and partners to save money and or to maximize return on our investments. It's been letting everyone in the process know what my value proposition is. And my value proposition is described, or I describe it myself, as ensuring that whatever money we spend is spent wisely. So regardless of it being pounds, euro, dollars, is that there's some objectivity to the spend, there's some evaluation and some understanding that this is not our own money. It's not come easily. We work for it, and everyone is trying to succeed together. So my value proposition to the business is allowing them to focus on their activities, and then I bring my value proposition in. So on collaboration, I think it's been like this in you can say more or less all of my roles, but it's really come into play here at Lego. My approach has been that we understand what each other's role is in the activities we collaborate on, and that we take the accountability for our roles on which we collaborate. So I fully appreciate and recognize that there's L&D people that are much better SMEs and much more capable of some of the subject matter criterias within learning and development. But what I think I bring to the table is my SME experience in influencing communication, reading people, the negotiation, and then I bring in, you can say, a second guess.
What do you mean by a second guess?
So there's scenarios where someone have been so determined on what they want that they get tunnel vision, you can say. So they don't see what is close to, but not exactly the same. So I bring that second guess in, saying, "Are you sure? Have you considered this?" And not to say that it changes a lot every time, but it's just confirmation that yes, they are aware and they are, you can say, sticking to their opinion, or it brings them to their change of perspective, see things in a new way. You would, from, I think, is it mindfulness, where this about coming back to things and seeing it in a new way sometimes help because you appreciate things a little differently. So I think just reminding them of that in the process helps everyone know that we're being aligned on something that we essentially is going to contract on, or that they're going to pay for.
And could you give us an example of a sort of a recent process that you might have gone through, and a few highlights there of like what worked well and maybe what could have been better?
Um, yeah, so you can say there's a specific one that we recently conducted, and as many who are familiar with procurement knows that there's, you can say, three different ways of approaching something. You can do an RFI, an RFQ, or an RFP. The RFI is very exploratory. We don't necessarily know what we want. We want to understand what you can deliver, so we can identify internally what we are looking for. The RFQ is, I know exactly what I want. I want, you can say 20 licenses of, let's say, the example of language training platform. Please quote me a price on that. And then there's the RFP, which is a little bit, at least how we've used it, a little bit of both. You get some indications of price and investment, but you also get the sparring and the inspiration that might be needed for you to guide your overall vision, which you haven't necessarily narrowed down yet, into something where you feel comfortable both financially but also delivery-wise, that you can navigate it. And here there's good examples of how we, for example, don't necessarily share budgets every time, because it limits our opportunity to have that inspiration. We might have other ways of indicating where we navigate financially, but still ask for that creativity and that vision in helping us deliver something to our portfolio.
Okay, that makes sense. And if you take a recent RFP and sort of how, maybe what went well in terms of the role play that each of you had, and maybe a couple of highlights for people to take away as a tip.
Yeah, so a recent example has actually been that because of a lot of the collaboration, some of my stakeholders in learning and development, they actually can run with some of the writing of the RFP themselves. They of course have me as part of it, but it's not necessarily that I sit and do the work all the time. And this is of course because we have so much on our case or our desk that we work all the time. But here, essentially, they were sending this out as part of the communication afterwards. We then have a dialogue on who takes which part of the conversations. So who plays which role in asking tough questions to the vendors, who sits on the presentations or reviews. So we have that collaboration and trying to understand who does what. And while they were sending, you can say, sending out the RFP, we also have an agreement that they don't need to worry about when they reject, because that's part of my work. I enable them to succeed with what they're doing. They don't need to be the ones creating bad atmosphere in the potential partners they might not work with on this project, but potentially a next one. Right. So we do those collaborations and identify who takes which activities and which responsibilities in the process, so that as I say, if I need to take a tough negotiation with the vendor, it's not reflecting bad on the individual that's going to manage the business the next 12 or 24 months, because they're not the one who put them in a situation, right? That's the procurement guy. So to some extent, it's playing the good cop, bad cop, but it's we don't do it just for the fun of it. We do it to maximize, of course, the return on the investment, and work with our partners for value creation, and succeeding together.
That's great. Now, I'm about to jump to our next topic, which is around the last 12 months. Before I do that, I'm going to ask my colleague here to submit a quick poll where all of you can reflect on the last 12 months. And do I need to share the slide for that? Or, yeah, I can. Okay, so here it is. In the aftermath of a pandemic, have you had to cancel programs and agreements, reschedule, replan to later, or increase offerings? I know they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but if you kind of think about the majority of what you've been doing in the last year. So already a clear winner here in terms of rescheduling and replanning later or virtually. I mean, definitely we have seen that digital transformation has had some rocket fuel over the past year. And there's also been a number of delays of programs. So while we get into that, maybe you can talk a little bit more, Christian, about what you've seen in the last 12 months at Lego, sort of your initial response as an organization, and then what followed.
Yeah, so I think like many others, we saw a stop of almost all activities, review situation, where are we, what's going on, people being sent home in different waves across the world, and what do we do, right? So that was sort of the initial. Then it hit us that there's a need to create some clarity on what's going on, what's next, what's immediate upcoming. What did we have in the pipeline? Do we postpone? Do we buy time? Do we reschedule, rebook? And then we sat down and collaborated with vendors, finding out the right way to shift these things around. Then, of course, you can say we learned, like everyone else, that this was not a 3 to 6 week thing. It's probably more a matter of new normal. And then we began to prioritize and figure out what can work and how. And I think in this is where the collaboration again between procurement and our learning and development team comes in and show its true value, because we become the link between the vendor and the stakeholder. So vendors were perhaps trying to keep money, trying to keep business alive, trying to talk contracts all of a sudden. Stakeholders might be very eager to change or get something to the employees, which can be difficult. But our proper assessing of some of these changes led to actual benefiting solutions or beneficial solutions, where instead of necessarily canceling or potentially paying more for creating virtual setups, which could add complexity on both sides, there could be some training, some tools needed to be purchased, etc. But in collaboration and in our partner way, we created mutual value. So I do have a specific example where we have a executive training set up where a lot of senior people in the past have gone to school and been taught some very fancy programs. Now, this, of course, couldn't be done during a pandemic where travel restrictions are there. So what do we do? Do we cancel? No, we work very closely with those partners, because it's in Lego's interest to make sure that these people go to some sessions, that they get as much possible outcome in spite of the situations. Vendors' initial response is setting up virtual is an added complexity. It creates cost. Yeah, but that might be. But if that is the case, the outcome is we might risk canceling, and we're not interested in that. So how do we collaborate to find what are our priorities? Lego's priority was to ensure that our employees, the executives here, get something that is very much in line with what the initial program design is. And the vendor is, at least it seemed like it, interested in keeping business running, business continuity, hands on deck. So how do we trim out the fat, so to say, and make that repurposed for other priorities? So in all lessons, we sat down looking at the different offerings. Where is time spent in preparation that can be combined into something else? How do we deploy the tools to do this? And at the very end, it actually ended up looking like we were going to save money on this program, because we managed to shift things around, so to say. Our opinion, however, was that we're already saving on, you can say, travel budgets. So instead of just taking this and banking it, how do we create mutual value and make a bigger impact for the people joining something you can say is both our partner promise and our people promise. Well, if we wanted to improve, instead of having breakout rooms of, I don't remember if it was 7 or 8 people, it would be a much better dynamic having perhaps 4 or 5 people. So that would mean that this cost could now be repurposed to essentially creating more breakout rooms. So it became a little more dynamic because it was virtual, whereas face-to-face, the 7 or 8 people might work very well, but online there is some, we're all trying to get used to it. What's really working? How do we make it effective? So again, we feel we got very much a sustainable program that we might continue as a as an offering because it has worked really well, and we've sustained the business for our vendor and addressed what was important to them, some business continuity.
I mean, I think it's such a great takeaway that, taking what you're doing, going back to your partners, breaking it down into all of its incremental pieces and saying, okay, what do we really want and need? What can we trade? What can we save? I mean, really taking a bit of creativity to the process, and rather than, wait, hold the phone, stop everything.
Yeah.
Which is, detrimental to both your staff and also to your partners. Rather, finding new value in terms of what the offering can do, and reassembling it in a new way.
Yeah, and actually, I think on the poll before, many had to reschedule and cancel. I think on the bottom line, we might have increased our offerings. They've just been different. They've looked different. So I think what the last year showed many of us is the importance of remote leading and remote working with colleagues, mental wellness, letting people process at own pace. And we began actually an internal process of designing learning paths of existing curriculums with existing partners. We created speaker sessions. We created our own webinars, very much on how to deal with change. We had inspirational speakers come in and give tips and tricks. And I think this has learned, or we've learned a lot from it. It's taught many how to better deal with the ambiguity and work with the resilience, and very much within our existing partnerships and bringing this forward. And I think very much that is the lie, not the lie, but the truth behind our recent employee survey being as good as it is. I think if I remember correctly, the 2020 employee survey for the Lego Group was the best ever. And I think this shows, again, bringing back to the framework I showed before, that we care. We care about our people. We have a people promise. We have a partner promise. We have a identity where we all feel like we are able to be there. So personally, I spent a lot of time on a road cycle because it made me, it gave me a break from sitting at this desk, which I've been sitting at for the last year. And our organization helped it along the way by emphasizing the need to take your vacation days, the need to motivate yourself instead of just doing emails, the offerings of webinars, learning paths, so that you continue it instead of just stopping and slowing down. And I think that is really the background. Of course, we've had an amazing financial year as well, which doesn't do us any bad. But I think the people promise really helped our employee survey up in the last year, despite the global situation.
Well, so there was another story you had told me before about, it, in some respects, it was a year that was business as usual, or actually better than usual in terms of sales for Lego, but it wasn't as easy for production and in the L&D space, production training. And what I liked, so I thought you could share a little bit about this story and sort of how it came about.
Yeah. No, you're right. We've had a great year in sales. Our products seem to be something people can relate to in a year of pandemic and spend time with. But you're right, and you mentioned it before as well, that technology in the last year has come far. A good scenario or a good example of that is we might all have come across virtual reality or augmented reality in some way in the last year, 2, 3 years, whether it's on your phone or digital goggles for a video game or something else. But I've never really seen it being put into play because it seems still more of a gimmick than actual practicality for work, right? But in the last year, we've had some situations where trainings or setup of materials would merely not be possible because travel doesn't allow it, or you can't go into the factories. So we've had a partnership, you can say, with other departments that brought in some goggles that now enables a molding machine operator to actually sit in a remote location and learn about the knobs and dials and screens on a molding machine. So while he's not there, he can be skilled or upskilled into operating it remotely, which is normally not the practice. At the same time, the same technology has allowed, you can say, an engineer sitting in Denmark making changes to a product line, having a person on the line in, for example, Mexico. With this technology, the guy in Denmark can now see the knobs and dials and actually direct him and guide him into creating the right settings, or telling him, when you dial that, then this happens, and then you need to look at the dial over on the left, but live and virtual. And this is something we've not found a practical use for before, because travel has just been so normal and custom to everyone. And even though we travel, we rarely travel just for one thing. So there could be other things we're missing out on, but this hasn't suffered despite that.
And was this like sort of sitting there in your vendor bank, like long
So it was
forgotten,
not sitting
or
in mine. So
no?
this is not one of my vendors, but we of course work with different categories where someone shared this, and we found you can say, practical use for it in a collaborative way. So it's not just your direct business stakeholders, but it's very much your procurement colleagues or your IT colleagues that you need to, of course, communicate with and understand what's going on, or share your concerns and your troubles, because it might be that they're sitting on something that can benefit you.
Well, I love the creativity in that. I mean, I love how, a colleague from sort of not necessarily typically associated with the technical training of engineers,
No.
jumps in and brings something that I imagine will have quite a lasting impact. And so it brings us to our third topic, which is around creativity in the procurement and the buying process of L&D solutions. So could you share a little bit about your approach, Lego's approach to bringing that creativity into the buying process?
Yeah. So as I said in the initial statements, I work very much partnering with my stakeholders and colleagues, less just trying to either tell them or be told. So we regularly work with category plans. We see webinars like this. We have check-ins. We try to sit at each other's tables to understand what we're doing. We attend conferences. We have different insights, white papers, webinars, so much different. But there are also, you can say, when we have some vendors that might be working on a project where we want to test if they know us, or if they have the creativity to work with us, if they can live the mutual value creation, we can put them to the test. And we've had examples where we've brought to them a set of Lego bricks and asked them actually to build their offer. So
I would totally get into that.
Yeah, and I would really challenge you to either trying to build executive training or language training using Lego bricks.
Uh,
But it back to the point on bringing, you can say, bringing creativity in. It's again taking a new perspective on things and trying to see things differently, or try to communicate them differently. So we don't necessarily get too bogged down on something, but we see the whole picture. At least we have that open dialogue, and it creates a great rapport. It creates that natural flow of communication, and then people are enjoying it.
mm,
Um, Trying to show how they build, I don't know, a mobility lesson, or the yeah, online language training
mm,
licenses.
mm,
Enjoyed building that. Um, but it removes sometimes the conversation from really locked in specific offerings, and
mm,
takes it a little bit back to earth, and try to have a sensible conversation of offerings and how can we do things differently, and if we are stuck in one solution, how do we ensure that they challenge us and drives us in whatever solution that could be more beneficial for us. We focus on, you can say, what's core of the offering that we're looking to do something with.
okay. So it helps kind of. How does that sort of spatial awareness help in the process? Is it sort of showing how they map onto your organization, or showing sort of
Yeah.
give us a like a one practical example that you've seen?
No, we many companies have different DNAs, right?
Right.
Working for a Mask at one point, people talked about the light blue blood running in your veins. You
Yeah.
get familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
In other companies, it's different DNA, and it gets under your skin. In Lego, we have um, I think we have a DNA in ourselves that uh, if you don't necessarily fit into that, you probably have a hard time here. But
Mm,
if you find that right vibe, you probably can be here forever. And sometimes when we work with partners, we we can see that they might not necessarily understand who they're pitching, right? Um, we've had examples where someone come in and pitch for yeah, learning and development, whether it's a purpose or a mindfulness driven activity, but then it becomes very much about creating revenue and creating profit and creating productivity, which it's so not the intention of that tender. And
mm,
while the pitch might be right, it's we're the wrong audience for it.
mm,
So
mm,
it's very much about this knowing who your customer is, um, and knowing the DNA and what Lego is, or at least for the people working there. And again,
right.
this will sound different to different companies, but I'm sure if everyone in the audience think, well, they have something that make them unique. There is
Right.
probably some here that where profit and productivity and massive earnings are the exact topics that will make them take their mark on saying, then you're qualified.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
we're sometimes looking for something different.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions from our audience
Yeah.
in these last 10 minutes or so. So the one of the first questions I wanted to ask you was, at what point in the buying process do you think L&D should bring procurement on board?
um, as early as possible.
As early as
So
possible.
as early as possible, and I again, we do differentiate between buying activities and buying projects, and whether the size and scale of the activities are. So some, if it's a contract, then fine, we'll engage on that. But and when I say we, I do also just mean me, try to engage very much with the stakeholder as early, so I know as much as possible. And if I'm
Mm,
at least informed, then it's often okay for them to run a little bit with the ball before me joining the conversations, for them
mm,
again to narrow things down a little bit. But I think for me it's important to understand what we're looking at for me to
mm.
best play my role in the collaboration.
That's great. Thank you for that. Another question was around SME partners and suppliers will often be more fragile than their larger competitors. does the procurement team do anything to offer favorable flexibility to SMEs?
SME partners.
Mm,
I No, not that I'm familiar with. I think
mm,
we objectively look at what is our intended outcome and
mm,
who can offer it or who can create a transparency. And if an SME partner has more, then I think we're not uh, we can easily choose them. What we are looking into, and I think more companies in general are doing this, is creating, uh, ensuring, or creating a more transparency on diverse sourcing opportunities. So if the question is linked a little bit to that, I think we're obligated to look at all the options out there, and I think we're pursuing those as well.
okay. And finally, I imagine that there's a number of companies in the audience that would hope to sell to Lego at one point. Do you have any advice to all of these potential suppliers and vendors who might be chasing you for a bit of business?
If you have something that's right for us, feel free. No, but I think it's not always about the product. I think
Mm,
it's very often about the people and the opportunities to create solutions or initiatives that will actually um, make a difference. And since we're people, I think it's important that you invest the time to connect with people, to connect and know, as I said before, your customer and communicate that to me or to whoever you're reaching out to for trying to deliver into, let's say, Lego or any other company. Um, if it's just a here's our product, feel free to connect with me, or here's a sales pitch. I tend to not focus that much on it. I would much rather have people taking the time or the effort to actually introducing themselves, or silly comment saying, hey, by the way, saw you at this webinar, just wanted to connect. Because I would be inclined to not do it if there's not direct communication.
mm,
And I know a lot of other colleagues who would do so as well. So take just a little bit more time. It's not a KPI to, at least if it is, then fine, let me know that. But if it's a KPI just to reach out to a number of people, let's not do it for that. But then I'll happily share with you that, or share with your manager that you reach out to Lego and you gotta know or whatever. But that hopefully that's not the intent. It's to create
right.
these mutual value
Mm,
activities for
mm,
both of us, and very often that starts with the people.
right. Well, Christian, thank you so much for your time today. We will be sharing the slides for those of you who asked. There is a bit more in terms of the takeaways written down on slides for you to have a look at, so be sure to have a look. Just a few key takeaways again. In terms of procurement and L&D working closely together, getting involved in the process as early as possible, meeting one another as people and really understanding one another's mutual objectives. In terms of reacting to the pandemic, really getting creative, breaking offerings apart into the parts that really add value and what might be sort of superfluous in the given context, and looking at ways to sort of either save that or reinvest that in getting even greater outcomes out of programs. And finally, using a creative approach in the procurement process to really see if you have not only a product fit, product cost fit, but also a cultural fit in terms of how this is really going to fit into the organization. So Christian, thank you again for your time. Much
Thank you,
appreciated.
Ben.
For those of you who would like to know more about EF and Halt Ashridge, there's a bit more information on the screen here. We have been for 50 years delivering language, culture, and leadership for B2B, for large organizations around the world. customized leadership development programs, and customized language training solutions to help our customers in their job roles and language focus. So thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for joining, and we wish you all a great day and rest of the week.